This is Algebra 2, Lesson 2.2. We're doing slope and rate of change review from Algebra 1. We're finding slopes of lines, and then we're using those slopes in real life problems. Begin on page 75 in your textbook. Three definitions to start. The first one is the definition of a slope. The slope is a ratio of the vertical change to the horizontal change. People, when it's a non-vertical line, people refer to this as the rise over the run, or rise over the run. Think of it as going up and down over how many times it goes left and right. If it goes up, it's positive. If it goes down, it's negative. If it goes left, it's negative. If it goes right, it's positive. Again, all of this is review from Algebra 1. Parallel lines have the same slope. This one says two lines in a plane that do not intersect. You may or may not have learned about another kind of lines in geometry class called skew lines. Skew lines also don't intersect, but they're on separate planes. Okay, so if you're talking about like two separate planes, like if this one's on top of this one, this line might be going this way on this plane, and this line might be going this way on this plane. But those lines will never intersect because this line right here, this plane is above this line, and this plane is below it. But again, those are called skew lines. That's not what we're talking about here. We're going back to slope. And we're talking about lines that don't ever intersect. But what you have to know about slope when you're talking about parallel lines is that they have the same exact slope. Perpendicular lines, slopes form a right angle. Their slopes are the negative reciprocal of each other. So when you see that phrase, don't freak out. Negative reciprocal. All negative means is change it. Change it. That's all negative means. That means if it's positive, it becomes negative. Change it to negative. If it's negative, change it to positive. It doesn't mean it's going to be negative at the end. Change it. The reciprocal part, remember, that's a fancy phrase that means to flip it. And that's been the same since you learned about multiplying fractions or dividing fractions. Negative reciprocal, change it and flip it. Same slope, parallel lines. Perpendicular lines, change it and flip it. And here's your slope formula. Most people don't remember this exactly, but most people know how to use this every time that they do it. What you have to understand is, if you just look at it as the top over the bottom, the top is the change or the difference from one y point to the next y point. Since it's the difference, that's why it's minus. The only time people mess that up, the only time I see students mess that up, is if it says minus a negative value. They'll, instead of adding it, they'll subtract it. On the bottom, same thing. The change or the difference, again, that's why it's minus in between them, the x values. The key to this, the important part of this, is you go the same direction both times. What I mean by that is, like this one says y sub 2 and x sub 2, they have to be stacked on top of each other like that. Y sub 1 and x sub 1 have to also be stacked on top of each other. It can't say y sub 2 on the top of 1 and x sub 1 on the bottom. This right here is a no-no. That won't work if that happens. Most people, when they solve the slope or they calculate the slope, most people just say, okay, well, this is y sub 2, this minus this, and then they put it over, this is x sub 2, this minus this, and that's perfectly fine. And we'll do something like that in just a second. Here's finding the slope of a line. Find the slope of the line that passes through negative 2, 0, and 1, 2. What I was talking about a second ago about doing that, well, these are your two y values, so you can say 2 minus 0. We know that gives us 2. And you can say these are your x values, 1 minus a negative 2. Again, minus a negative means plus. So you're going to have 2 on top, and you're going to have 1 plus 2 or 3 on the bottom. Here are the steps for it, though. Here's your slope formula, y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Y sub 2's value, if you label it, all you have to do is label this. Remember, it's alphabetical. This is x, this is y. This is X, this is Y. It doesn't really matter which one you call sub 1 and which one you call sub 2. Since this point comes first, though, we'll call it sub 1 just so we don't get confused. And since this one comes second, we'll call it sub 2, again, where we don't get confused. So this right here asks for Y sub 2. That's this value right here. So 2 minus, this one says Y sub 1. That's this value right here, 0. And that's where 2 minus 0 comes from right there. The next part says X sub 2. That's this one, 1 minus X sub 1. This one right here, negative 2. And again, minus a negative. 2 minus 0 is going to be 2. And 1 minus a negative means plus a positive. 1 plus 2 is going to be 3. So your slope is going to be 2/3. And you can see that that's what's going on the picture. It's rising. It's going up 2 right here. Up 2. And it's going to the right 1, 2, 3 times right here. There's your slope of 2/3, or 2/3. Again, I know this is a review for everybody in here. No, if this is hard for you, let me know. This is something that you missed along the way. I'm going to go very fast over it. On the back, everybody, find the slope of this line. The line that passes through -2, -4, and 3, -1. It'll only take you a few seconds. There's the slope formula. Probably don't need it. There it is. So the first thing you want to do is label your points. This one's X, this one's Y. This one's X, this one's Y. This one we'll call sub 1. This one we'll call sub 2. So it says M's value is equal to Y sub 2. That's this one. -1. It says minus, that's next, Y sub 1's value. That's this one. Minus a -4. There we go. Minus a negative. Make sure you don't lose that. Over X sub 2. That's this one right here. -2 minus again X sub 1's value is this one right here. And look what I just did right there. It's very, very easy to do. I went Y sub 2 on the top, which was -1, minus Y sub 1, which is -4. And then on the bottom, I went X sub 1. That's not what you need to do. Notice that mistake. Don't let that happen. Okay? So instead of that, our Y sub 1 value, our X sub 2 value, we should say. X sub 2 is not that one. X sub 2 is this one right here, 3. Again, minus our X sub 1 is a -2. Again, we have minus a negative. Anytime you have minus a negative, it means plus a positive. So go ahead and put plus a positive. -1 plus 4 is -3. On the bottom, 3, again minus a negative, means plus a positive. 3 plus 2 is 5. There's your slope right there. -3/5. Very easy mistake I could have made and come up very much so with the wrong slope. Here are classifying lines by their slope. If M is positive, or if M is greater than 0, M's represent slope. It rises from left to right. Think about something positive as going up a ramp. Like if this is your little man and he's walking along this road right here. If he's walking on this road, he's got to go up. He's got to go up a ramp for it to be positive. This slope right here, from left to right, like I said, from left to right, it rises. A line with a negative slope falls from left to right. Again, same little man. When he's walking along the road, now it's going to fall. It's going to go down. Again, from left to right, it falls down. Most people do fine with both of those. The next two are the ones that they get confused. Something that has a 0 slope is horizontal. If it has a 0 slope, it's horizontal. So think of what's going on A horizontal line is a line that looks like this, one that goes across. It's 0. One way you could remember the difference is on this, you could make this into 0. You can use that as part of the letter 0. If that doesn't work for you, compare this point with their slopes. It doesn't, remember, it's how much does it rise over how much does it run. It doesn't rise at all. It doesn't go up or down at all. So its rise in that case is 0 over, there's an infinite amount how many times it goes left and right. Let's say it goes over 1 time for its run. This right here, 0 divided by 1 is 0. Just like writing it with the word 0. Horizontal line, which has a Z in it, horizontal. Horizontal line, you can write 0 with it. One more way to remember it. The other one is a vertical line, has no slope. It is undefined. And these are the pictures you already have to go with them. It's undefined. The reason it is undefined is because it goes just like this. It's a vertical line up and down. Its rise and its run from this point to this point, for example, its rise or its run is infinite. It goes up and down an infinite amount of times. So let's say it goes up 1 from one of those to the others. But it doesn't run at all. It doesn't go to the left or to the right at all. And since it doesn't move at all, 0 is at the bottom. And this is one of those mathematical no-nos right here. 0 can't be at the bottom. That's why an undefined line or a vertical line is considered undefined. Again, same thing with pictures. If you have this line looking like this, you can use this to write an N to put no slope versus 0 slope for a horizontal one. Undefined. Here's example number 2, classifying lines using slope. Without graphing, tell whether the lines or tell whether the line through the given points rises, falls, so positive, negative, is horizontal or is vertical. So there's your slope formula again. Y sub 2 minus Y sub 1. 3 minus 3 is going to give you 0 on top right there. Over X sub 2, this one, minus X sub 1. 4 minus a negative 4 plus 4 is going to be 8. 0 over 8. You have 0 on the top. Remember, 0 is a horizontal line. B says negative 2, 2, 3, 0. Again, same thing. 0 minus 2 is going to be negative 2 on top. And 3 minus a negative 2. Minus a negative means plus. 3 plus 2 is going to be 5 on the bottom. So we have negative 2 over 5. Since it's a negative value, since m is less than 0, and it's negative, that means the ramp is going down. The little man's walking down the ramp, so it falls. On the back, without graphing this, tell whether it rises, falls, is horizontal, or is vertical. Negative 2, 3, 1, 5. Take about 30 seconds. Okay, here is a key, or here's a hint. If you don't see the same number in both the X and the Y positions, or in both X's or both Y's, you know it's not going to be horizontal or vertical, because you're not going to get 0 out of either one of those. So we know this first line, since it's 5, 3, or since it's a 5 and a 3, and a 1 and a negative 2, we know it's not going to be horizontal or vertical. It's either going to be positive or negative. Let's determine which one it is. 5 minus 3 is 2. 1 minus a negative 3 means 1 minus a negative 2 is 1 plus 2, which is 3. That's a positive number. Therefore, that slope is going up. It is a positive, or it rises. What about this one? Do the same thing. Take 30 seconds. Okay, here you go. You got yourself something that you should be alerted by right here. You have the same number for both of your y's. It's either going to be vertical or horizontal. It's either going to be undefined, or it's going to be horizontal, or it's going to be zero slope. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1. Negative 2 minus a negative 2 means negative 2 plus 2, which gives you 0 on the top. 3 minus 1 gives you 2 on the bottom. So you have 0 divided by something, which gives you 0. Therefore, this is a horizontal line. Maybe it's horizontal if it's 0. If 0 would have been on the bottom, it would have been undefined. It would have been vertical. Example 3 is comparing steepness of lines. Think of steepness of lines if you graphed them, or if you looked at the picture of them. If you were riding a bike or a skateboard, which one would you go faster down? Think of how steep the ramp is. Line number 1 says through point -10 and 0.5. Line 2 says through point 2437. So let's look at our slopes real quick without even looking at all this other stuff. 5 minus 0 is 5 for that one. 0 minus a -1 is 1. So the slope for that one's 5. You should be able to do it that quick. Y'all learned slope already. 7 minus 4 is 3 for that one. 3 minus 2 is 1 for that one. So you have 5 for the line on the top, 3 for the line on the bottom. The slope is the one that has the bigger. It's not just the bigger number, it's the bigger absolute value, because it can be negative or positive. So the first line, again, here it is in the slope formula. 5 minus 0 and 0 minus the -1, which is 1. And here it is, 7 minus 4 is 3, and 3 minus 2 is 1. Again, 3. So when you compare those two slopes, 5 and 3, the slope of line 1 is steeper than the slope of line 2, because it's 5. This is what I was saying a second ago. Don't let just the fact that it's a bigger number confuse you. If we had gotten, instead of the first slope being 5 and the second slope being 3, if we had gotten -5, think about what I mean by steepness right here. 3 is a bigger number than -5, absolutely positively. But when you're talking about the steepness, this line from this point to this point would go down 5. So think about what's going on with the line. It would go down 5. This line over here, from this point to this point, would go up 3. Or it's probably even be a little shallower than that. From this point to this point, it would go up 3. So even though this one's going downhill, it's negative. If you rode a bike or a skateboard down it, or a car, you would go faster on the one that has the higher absolute value, 5, than the 3, positive or negative. On the back, everybody, which one is steeper? Line number 1 or line number 2? Take 1 minute. Okay, the first line, your two y values, 2 and -4. 2 minus a -4 means 2 plus 4. So you're going to have 2 plus 4 is 6 on the top. Your x values, 5 minus 1. 5 minus 1 is 4. So 6 over 4 is the same thing as 3 over 2. There's your slope of the first line, 3 over 2. Do the same with the second line. -2 and -5 are your y values. -2 minus a -5 means plus 5. -2 plus 5 is 3. 1 minus a -2. You go the same direction. Minus a negative means 1 plus 2. 3 over 3. So now you have two different slopes to compare. You got 3 over 2 to compare, and you have 3 divided by 3, which is 1. So which one of these is the bigger number? They're not in the same form. One of them is in an improper fraction. The other is in an integer form. You have to know that this is the same thing as 1.5 or 1.5 in order to compare it to 1. That's the greater value, 1.5 or 1.5. Therefore, in this case, line 1 is the steeper line. And we will finish this page tomorrow.